Welcome to the Podium Pod, the Pick and Roll's national basketball podcast as we continue through the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. I'm Adam Webster and I'm joined today by Pick and Roll feature writer Hayley Wilds. Hayley, firstly, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And good to be here after an Opals win. I'll say that much.
Oh, it was a stressful one, though. These Opals sure know how to make it really, really stressful across Paris 2024. If you didn't catch the game or if you're just joining us afterwards, of course, the Opals have defeated Canada 70-65 in their second group game of the 2024 Paris Olympics. They moved to a -8 point differential across the two games, of course, losing that first game to Nigeria by 13 and then winning this one by 5. We know, Hayley, every point counts. And I want to kind of start there because I kind of think we have to start at the end and then work our way to the beginning, because they were up by 10 with a minute left. And all of a sudden they won by 5, which it's great. It's a win. We'll take a win, particularly after the debacle of a couple of nights ago. But it does feel a little hollow.
Yeah, 100%. And like we were sort of talking about off air, it can be a major difference down the line. And especially when you have a team like France that you're playing next to is an incredible team and they're sort of feeling good and up and about. So if you need to beat them by a certain margin, those 5 points could be massive down the road. But obviously if we beat France, it'll mean we're through. But if we lose by, say, 10 instead of 5, it makes a massive difference. So yeah, it was disappointing for it to sort of end like that after it looked like they'd sort of found their groove in that last quarter. And even Canada missed those 4 free throws at the start of the fourth, which obviously was tables reversed for Australia the game before. So that was helpful. But yeah, a 5-point win, you'll take it, like you said, after that opening loss to Nigeria.
Well, you've got to remember that 2 third-place teams will make the quarterfinals as well. So even if there's a loss against France, there's a glimmer of hope if France beat Nigeria significantly and then Canada managed to beat Nigeria as well, then there is still a chance that we can lose and still make it to the quarterfinals. But there would have to be a really significant series of events to occur to assure that particular outcome, because it's going to be really, really difficult to be able to get over France, as you say. We've just made it all that much more difficult for ourselves because of that first up loss against Nigeria. I want to get to this game now. You and I were texting throughout the game, and the one name that we just kept saying was Sammy. Sammy Whitcomb was a woman possessed out there. Yeah. 18 points, 10 assists. She really was the entire offense at different points of that game. She had the ball in her hands when it mattered, whenever it mattered, and she always seemingly made the right play, which the Opals really lacked against Nigeria. Yeah. They lacked that guiding star, that guiding principle, and Sammy Whitcomb just said, give me the ball, I'm going to do something good with it.
Yeah, 100%, and that's one of the better Opals performances I've seen in quite a while. Obviously, you think of that Lauren Jackson performance in the bronze medal game at the World Cup and Steph Talbot throughout that World Cup campaign. But given the stakes that were there to be won, like obviously the Opals need a win. So for Sammy to come out and do that, it's awesome. And especially when she's been such a staple of the Opals now for a number of years. And this is obviously her first Olympics, though, but she's been such a massive driving force for the Opals, and I think she deserves to have a game like that on the biggest stage. And, yeah, it was just a joy to watch her play. And obviously, over the years, there's sort of been a bit of talk about, can she be that ball handler for the Opals? She's known as a shooting guard. Can she what's the right balance there, I suppose? But when you're doing what she's done tonight, I think you'd say that they found the perfect balance. And obviously, she got going early with those threes and the shooting, and then that confidence sort of grows from there when the defense is sort of building out to her and she's able to drive past. And, yeah, she was magnificent tonight.
That play down the stretch where she let out that guttural scream, I loved it. There was so much passion in there. There was a real emotional release of, I'm here, I've arrived, I'm ready to lead this team to victory. And you know, I think this team was looking for someone to say, I'm driving this car, and Sammy Whitcomb has announced herself as that player, and now the Opals know that they have someone that they can rely on for the rest of this tournament.
Yeah, 100%. And her and Steph Talbot both sort of had plenty of assists tonight. I think they were at 16 assists between them. I'm not sure if there was one late, but yeah, it's great to have those two. And obviously Talbot, she sort of had an up and down couple of games, but when she's on, the Opals are such a different team with her out there. And the mix between her and Wickham is great at times. Obviously, as I said, Talbot has sort of had some turnovers, but I felt like that second half, the turnovers did slow down for the Opals and they were able to get through their sets a bit more and they just looked more comfortable out there together. So hopefully that's sort of a sign of things to come and that they are building into this campaign because they're going to have to go up a gear or two to match it with France.
I wrote a lot of notes in that contest. We can go back to the first half for a lot of negative notes from myself. So, a lot of silly turnovers. There was 18-6 in a quarter time, 5 turnovers for the Opals, more fouling in the second quarter, more turnovers. It seemed to be, more of the same, albeit slightly less pronounced than the Nigeria game, but we were still seeing the same deficiencies in their game and the same problems that we saw against Nigeria. Far too much fouling, far too many turnovers, far too many trips to the line for Canada across this game, which I spoke about with Tom in the lead-up games. There were 53 turnovers in 53 free throw attempts in 2 games, which you just can't have in this environment. But, they were able to turn it around in the second half. But there are still some worrying signs, Hayley, about how this team is approaching both ends. The offensive end, taking care of the ball, the defensive end, too many fouls, and Ezi Magbagor barely played due to foul trouble. So that was one thing that didn't work in the Opals' favour.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I said it to you before this, how if you get away with a win in a game where Ezi Magbagor only plays 15 minutes because of foul trouble, you'd sort of take that because if that happens against France, you'd think you're in trouble. But I think what it sort of shows is those older players, Kayla George, Mariana Tolo, they were there and they were ready to compete and frankly dominate their minutes they had. So I think it's important to sort of see those players. They can still contribute, and we know they've been great players for a number of years, but they're still there and they're ready to sort of go when their name is called. But yeah, those turnovers are definitely a worry and they're just frustrating. Obviously, the players know that pressure builds after each turnover, and each turnover it just gets worse and worse, and you can sort of see almost the pressure does build, and it's sort of worrying when you do see that out there. But I think it's sort of important for them to know that there's a team out there, and the passes that they're sort of turning over are simple ones. If they just run the right play, they'll get through it. But as I mentioned, I think it just sort of runs through the team and it's almost contagious. But yeah, I think as we mentioned, the second half, it did sort of slow down and the turnovers went away. So hopefully they're building on that.
Well, the Podium Pod is brought to you by Team Feet. Team Feet offers premium athletic socks for modern teams, however they compete. With sweat wicking cotton, arch support, ventilation panels, and compression stitching, Team Feet socks are built to outperform. Whether your team is tiny or 1,000 strong, Team Feet unites and excites your players and supporters with their combination of quality and performance. Join basketball teams around Australia and the world by choosing Team Feet. For designs and worldwide delivery, head to teamfeet.com. We thank Team Feet for their ongoing support of the show. Hayley, I want to talk about Mariana Tolo because we were really struggling for a consistent big on the floor in the first half. And the word that I wrote down in my notes was steady. Mariana Tolo was really a steadying presence for this team on both ends. Offensively got a bit more going in the second half, but in the first half, she just kind of straightened the team up and allowed them to take a breath and get into this game. It was a really impressive game from her.
Yeah, and as I sort of mentioned, that's what she's done for over a decade for the Opals. And I think Sandy knows she can call upon her if, as we saw, Magbagor and Smith were sort of in a bit of foul trouble. So you need to look elsewhere. And Tolo's always ready. She's just a workhorse. And she's done it in the WNBL. She's done it in Europe. And she's done it for the Opals. So I think it's impressive to still see her doing it at this age and for how long she's been doing it. But I think everyone who's ever sort of watched the Opals for the last decade knows she's capable of that. And she's just going to fight. Like if there's a loose ball, she's going for that. If there's a rebound to get, she's fighting tooth and nail for that too. And as we mentioned, the combination with her and George, they were just massive. Even George's second quarter, once she checked in and hit 3 straight away, and then some really strong defense. And then that buzzer beater 3 was just massive. And her celebration, she loves a good celebration. And it was great to sort of see that exhale of relief almost that, hey, we can shoot it and we can make plays when we need to. So I think that going into halftime was key. And then obviously we had some fall down in that second half, but yeah, to get the win, it's important to say the least.
One play you touched on there, Kayla George. It felt like whenever she hit the floor, something good happened. Yep. It felt like she was a part of so many positive plays, had a couple of fouls at the end and was a bit angry with herself on the bench. But overall, just had a wonderful game and a really positive output. I'll also touch on Steph Talbot, who was 2 for 10 in the first game, had a lot of stats in other categories, but struggled to score. In this one, she saw a couple of shots go down. I saw our friend Tristan Prentice, as well as Kane Pittman, tweet about this halfway through the game. It's good to see her hit the bottom of the net, and that really propelled her to be able to see a couple more shots go down. So Steph had 11 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists for the game. So filled the stats sheet again, but most importantly, contributed on the score sheet, was able to see the ball go through the bottom of the net. And that allows her to be able to get in positions to pass to open teammates. I mean, the 16 assists combined for Sammy and Steph in this contest, you and I spoke about it pre-game, that's precisely what you want from your wings in this sort of contest. You want them to take the ball by the scruff, or the game by the scruff of the neck, and say, I'm going to find the open teammate, I'm going to give them better quality shots, and we're going to have good offense.
Yeah, and one thing about Talbot, she's always going to try to make the right play, and that's been sort of her career, her whole career she's done that. And yes, she's had some turnovers, and like you mentioned, in the first game she couldn't hit a shot, but she's been making the right plays throughout. So I think that's important to note, that she's playing the right way, and when you play the right way, eventually things will start to turn, even though sometimes it feels like it can take a long time, but she's always going to make the right play. And yeah, I think she's building, now that she's getting some minutes under her belt. Obviously, she didn't have any warm-up games. She's sort of been coming back in the WNBA for the last couple of weeks, building minutes and building form. She finished the WNBA before the break really strongly. So I think it's sort of been building, and now obviously you go into the Opals, new teammates, and it's sort of a different environment. So I think she is building nicely, and now hopefully her and Sammy can sort of lead that charge against France. And yeah, against some of their key players, it's going to be massive for Talbot to keep continuing to make those right plays and put her teammates in good positions.
A lot of love for Kayla in the comments. Thanks to Tristan. Also, thanks to Luke. I think Luke might be able to step out and hit an outside shot too back in his day. I know who that is. Christy Wallace was absent in this contest. We've had a couple of comments and a couple of messages ourselves to say that she's got a knee injury, which is concerning, and it resulted in Tess Madgen playing a lot more minutes at point guard, and that sort of brings about a conversation about the offense, whether the offense needs to be more dynamic with a Jade Melbourne on the floor, whether it needs to slow down and be more deliberate with Tess Madgen on the floor. There are two totally different paces to the game with those two players taking control of this team. What's your view on that? You've been a huge fan of this team and this league and these players for so long.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting one, and it's almost, there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. It's what Sandy feels throughout the game and what she needs and what she feels the team needs. And I think there were right times when she put Tess in, when maybe Jade had a couple of bad turnovers, but I think tonight was more encouraging that Sandy did put Jade back out there after she had a couple of bad turnovers, and maybe she's growing confidence in Jade that she can turn it around after she has a turnover or two. But I think, yeah, Tess, as we know, Tess, she's just been massive for the Opals for a number of years. But it is an interesting one with Tess because it does sort of stagnate the offense when she's out there. But maybe that's more to do with the players not moving. She's always looking for the right option and looking for the right play, but maybe that just sort of exaggerates that our offense isn't moving because she's looking, but there's not much movement and it just stagnates. Whereas with Jade, maybe everyone's sort of standing around letting Jade take over it and make those dives to the rim and then move out from there. But it sort of, highlights that the offense isn't quite clicking when Tess is out there and it is so stagnated. But I think it's something to work on. And when you look back on the tape, they'll see that we just need to move more and get the ball going and it will start to build out from there.
And you don't need your assists, your playmaking to necessarily come from that position on the floor either. I mean, this game's a perfect example of that, with Sammy having 10 assists, Steph having 6 assists.
Yep.
So you have more options. Alana Smith was a little quieter in this contest, despite getting an early steal. Ezi Magbegor, obviously, as we say, in foul trouble. So against France, we're going to need our starting front court to really step up in that contest, play a lot more minutes, carry a lot more of the load on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, 100%. And when you look at a player, France, Gabby Williams, she's just a beast, and she's a really hard player to stop in the open court. And then obviously Johannes is their point guard, and she's a star, and she's one of the best ball handlers in. She's not in the WNBA this year because she's taken the year off to focus on these Olympics. So she's one of the most exciting players to watch. So ahead of that France game, I'd say watch out for Johannes. She's such a joy to watch, and she didn't play in the World Cup. She was injured in 2022. So for Australian fans, they may not be too familiar with her, but I feel like once you see the first 5 minutes of the game, you'll know who Johannes is. But yeah, I think you can't have those two with 3 early fouls against France, because they're a different caliber sort of outfit to Canada. No disrespect for Canada, but France are just playing with so much sort of confidence lately, and they've been building all year for this tournament, obviously at home. So I think you're going to need those two out there, and hopefully Magbegor can sort of, maybe it's always that first foul that comes back to bite you, the first foul that's a cheap one, then you quickly have 2, and it obviously builds from there. But we've got to have confidence in Ezi that she can learn from that one. And she tried, I think it was her 4th foul, she tried to pull away for a number of sort of defensive plays on that possession, but then the last one just got her. She did bite on that one, and then obviously sat for most of the game. But yeah, I think Ezi's, obviously she's played for the Opals plenty, and she's been dominated in the WNBA, so she knows what she's doing, and she knows she has to be sort of better than that on the defensive end.
Yeah, definitely a lot of positives to take from this game, and still a lot to work on. And, we keep touching on it, but this team hasn't been together for very long. They haven't played much together. They haven't had many practices. And we see that building all the time. A consistent part of my notes was that we were building confidence. And Steph Talbot kind of epitomized that, building confidence throughout the game. But we still see lapses. We still see lapses on defense. We still see bad turnovers. We still see fouls. And that just speaks to the inconsistency of the time this team's really had together. What do they need to focus on offensively? We've spoken about Gabby Williams, we've spoken about the French. What do you think they have to do offensively differently against France to be able to succeed, bring back that points margin even further with another victory, and assure themselves a quarterfinal berth?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because I think the keys to the game are Sammy Whitcomb and Steph Talbot on that offensive end, and they both had really good games offensively tonight. So maybe not a lot needs to necessarily change on the offensive end. Obviously, you'd like to have Magbegor and Smith involved more if they can stay out of foul trouble. So I think that will be a key to sort of have those looks inside when you've obviously Tolo stepped up, but you want to be going to your first options in Magbegor and Smith. And I think if they're down low in the paint, it's such a threat. And obviously Smith from the 3-point line is also massive. So we didn't see much of that tonight. So if we can add that in, as well as what we've seen from Whitcomb and Talbot, I think that'll be a massive plus. But yeah, I think it's just those turnovers. They're just killers out there. And we've seen it far too often throughout the first 2 games. But I think they are starting to learn, and as you mentioned, sort of build that confidence and trust in one another, because they just haven't played together, and that's no one's fault. These women have got to make a living playing in the WNBA, so they can't take the year off and focus on the Olympics. That's just ridiculous to sort of even contemplate. So there's no way around getting more practice and time together than what they're getting. So it is what it is, and I think they've just sort of got to deal with it, and I think they are starting to. And you're going to keep seeing some of those sloppy turnovers where you think a player's cutting and they don't, but hopefully they're minimised against France, because you're not going to have as many opportunities to turn the ball over.
Last point from me, it was satisfying to see the ball hit the bottom of the net for Isabel Bourlet in the second half, because she was 1 for 6. She struggled so far in her first 2 Olympic games, which at 19 years of age, you can't blame her. But she's such a star. She's such a budding star in this system. It was really good to see her hit a shot. Jade also being the other young player on the team. We saw her hit the bottom of the net a couple of times in that second half as well on a couple of really good drives. So the young guys are building. The young players are building into something and into more confidence and feeling more confident in themselves. So that's something that we can potentially lean on off the bench against France as well.
Yeah, and I actually, when Jada and Izzy were on the court together there for a minute or two, I thought, that's how awesome is that? Two players that have played together for a number of years in the junior system, and to be out there for the Opals together in their first Olympics is pretty unreal. And it's just exciting. Like, the next decade, they're going to be leading the Opals, and it's just a sort of a sign into the future. But obviously Jade's missed a couple of layups that she'd make 99 times out of 100, but you got to live with that because she's making the right play and she's attacking, and she's never going to stop driving to the basket with that force that she does. And she's missed a couple of bunnies, but her confidence, she's a confidence player, and she knows she's put the work in, and she's going to keep taking those shots and keep taking those drives to the bucket. I sometimes get a bit scared when she falls to the ground like she does. She takes those massive falls, but she gets up every time. And I think she's a player. She's obviously starting in her first Olympics, which is a massive deal. And it's sort of ahead of time. She's almost had to jump into that role with Beck Allen sort of being out on the eve of the Olympics. She's sort of been thrust into that starting role because obviously Beck would have started, but she's taken it with both hands and she's just attacking it. And I can't be too upset with her turning the ball over a couple of times a game when she's playing the right way, and it is just her second game of the Olympics.
You got to give someone of that age and that sort of skill set and that talent level a little bit of license to make some mistakes. And it feels like, it was Sammy's night tonight. Steph had a really good game. Mariana had a really good game. Anyone on this team, Kayla, anyone on this team can step up on any given game. It's just exciting to see who will do that against France, because we know that there'll be a couple of players that come up really big in that contest, particularly given it's do or die against the French on Monday morning. That game will be Monday morning, Australian Eastern Standard Time at 5 a.m. So we'll be with you on YouTube straight after that one. Obviously, the podcast will go live as well. So make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the notification bell to know when we're going live across all of these games. We'll be after the Boomers tomorrow night as well. So stay on YouTube. Stay connected to the Podium Pod channels as well across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course, the Pick and Roll website, pickandroll.com.au, where you can subscribe, support the great work that Hayley and the team do across pickandroll.com.au. Hayley, thanks for being with me. I've got you penciled in for an episode after the medal rounds, so I'm very much hoping that I get to see you again on the Podium Pod.
Fingers crossed that it all works out. And we got to go in with positivity against France because there's no other way to be it. So I think it's important that they know they can play the right way, and let's just hope those turnovers are cut down a little bit more. They're trending in the right direction. So if they can keep it to sort of 12 or under, that'd be a massive win against France. So let's hope they can get a win against the French.
Well, one down, one win to go against France on Monday morning. For Hayley Wilds, I'm Adam Webster. See you again next time on the Podium Pod. Thanks for being with us on YouTube tonight. Have a great night.